What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Alarm Fantasy Football. All right, I'm tagging out of Getting Buzzed, tagging in on Alarm Fantasy Football. I'm Howard Bender. With me, of course, Britt, Flinn, Andrew Cooper. Look at, I just want to, for the record here, look at how clean cut Coop looks. Look at how clean cut I look. I mean, Britt, you're always well put together because you spend time to worry about what you look like on these streams. These two idiots, me and him, we're like, oh, baseball cap.
Right. It's funny. Yeah. People are in the if we even like don't have a hat on or a hood covering our heads, then people are like, wow, look at these guys. But yeah. Britt,
yeah, y'all are shined up like new pennies.
Tired of Britt showing us up, dude.
Nobody is looking at me being like, ooh, who's that guy? Sorry. I'm like at that point right now. I kind of looked down a little bit and I was like, when am I at that age right now where is it a part in my hair or am I on the comb over? Because if I'm on the comb over, somebody needs to let me know immediately so I can stop that.
I think your hairline looks great.
Thank you.
Good, your hairline is envious. Trey Lance would kill for that hairline.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we got an hour of fantasy football deliciousness here to bring to you guys. So appreciate your comments in the chat. As always. Thanks, John. I appreciate the looking fresh comment there. If you guys got any questions for us, obviously put it in there as well. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like and subscribe button. Because again, that's how we feed our families, right? That's how we do it. Great stuff coming up here today. We're going to be spending some time looking at some late round wide receivers. Coop's got an article in the Fantasy Alarm draft guide that just dropped today. And then it looks like we're going to be talking about the NFC North and those coaching systems, those wacky Vikings and Lions and Bears and the Packers. Oh, that team there. So great stuff going on here. As always, we like to start things off by giving you some current events. So it's time for Britt, Flynn, and the news.
Oh, there's so much news today.
One of these days.
Thank you guys for that marvelous introduction. There's a lot of news to get to today. Training camp is obviously kicked off, and outside of training camp, there's a ton of stuff going on. Number one on the list is that the Lions are releasing their kicker, Michael Badgley, in a surprise move. There are no indications as to what prompted the move, but it looks like it will be Riley Patterson moving forward. Not a lot of discussion to be had on here, but it is interesting to note as some leagues like the Scott Fish Bowl have already drafted their teams.
It's crazy.
If you drafted Michael Badgley, I'm very sorry.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. If you're drafting a league where kicker matters that much, like the Scott Fish Bowl, then you're a sicko. And you got to be prepared for this type of stuff. You got to be prepared for this type of stuff to ruin your day. Like if this is a big problem for you, then you might have a big problem in general. I will say this though, it's crazy the trickle down butterfly effect in this league because this all came from Sean Payton actually, because Sean Payton showed up with the Broncos, and I guess Brandon McManus has this whole thing where he's like player union guy, doesn't like meetings and practices that are kind of quote unquote not mandatory. So when he was like, I'm not doing any of that, Sean Payton immediately gave him the chop. Jaguars went, scooped him up right away. They cut Riley Patterson. Riley Patterson shows up in Detroit via trade, beats out Michael Badgley. So if anyone has a gripe with this, if it messed up their Scott Fish Bowl team, Sean Payton is the guy you need to talk to on that one.
It is just a carousel. Kickers are such a carousel.
It's crazy.
Kickers are like coaches and offensive coordinators, right? It's the same cycle, the same names, back and forth. And you know what, Michael Badgley, don't drop him off your Scott Fish Bowl team yet because he could end up being picked up. I would say if you wanted to ask me where a good landing spot for Michael Badgley would be, Britt, I'm sending him to you in Dallas because I was
going to suggest that.
This guy, oh no, definitely not, man. Don't want to deal with that.
Howard, I was just picturing the offensive coordinators being like when you go to the dry cleaner and they're all just hanging on the rack, and you're like, hey, give me a Chan Gailey, and they just pull them off and bring them over to you. Like, here you go. You know, the same dudes every time.
Well, to Howard's point, the fact that they brought in like a USFL or XFL kicker, whoever he is, to compete with Vizcaino during training camp That was all the red flag that I needed. So I immediately thought Badgley's going to end up going to Dallas. So I'm glad that we're on the same page.
I wish you a good kicker. There you go. That's the only thing. I don't know if you caught the last show when I was talking about who the worst team and the worst fan base is, but
Oh, I did. Don't worry. Don't worry. It did not have me salty at all. I love you, Howard.
Well, speaking of worst teams and worst fan bases, Britt, maybe we should stay on topic and jump to what CJ Gardner-Johnson recently said. Did you see that one?
Everybody knows that Philly's fan base is horrible. I don't blame him.
Throw batteries.
Throwing batteries. Yeah.
That's
Sorry to jump in on you, but if you didn't see it, Howard, CJ Gardner-Johnson really does not like Philly fans. He said they're effing obnoxious, and I can't effing stand those effers. And he did not say effers on that one. So for those that don't know, he's a safety that played for the Eagles, now signed with the Lions. But man, he is not a fan of the fans over in Philly.
Well, when you have to grease the light poles to prevent riots. I mean, I actually watched the Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode with the World Series when they're talking, Charlie gets beat up by their mascot, like the guys in the parking lot beat them up. That story is more based on fact than it is fiction when it comes to fans in Philadelphia. So I don't think that he's necessarily wrong there. But another guy who
he is also kind of a dick. Like anybody who's seen CJ Gardner-Johnson on the field, he's kind of a dick anyway. So,
right.
I mean, this just makes it even more fun if Detroit ever ends up back in Philly.
I would love to see that matchup. But other players who ended up in Detroit, I don't know why Detroit is such a hot topic today, but the Jets traded Denzel Mims to the Lions overnight. So he's currently listed behind Marvin Jones on the Lions depth chart, but with Jamison Williams suspended for 6 games, he could carve out a role in the early part of the season. Does this help the Lions at all with their wide receiver trouble, if I can talk, or is he nothing more than just a depth piece at this point?
Well, I'll go first here because he's former Jet. First of all, can we flash that picture back up there, Ernie? Ernie Acosta, our producer. So look at how tight those uniforms look. Right?
Nice.
I mean, that looks tight. I like that a lot. But nevertheless here, does this solve the problem for the Detroit Lions? I don't necessarily know if it solves the problem for the Detroit Lions, but I mean, listen, they don't have, that's one of their biggest issues right now is that Jamison Williams is suspended. Marvin Jones is going to be, on the, he's going to be what the Z receiver is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who works better out of the slot than he does on the outside. Is he going to be the X receiver in this? Are they going to have Jahmyr Gibbs only lined up in the slot? What else is there? There's nothing else in there in Detroit. So they need a guy who's going to be able to help stretch the field. But I kind of feel like Mims is he's like a poor man's Khalif Raymond, if that's actually possible. To have that. I think Coop's tweet was really summed it up perfectly. And that was if Denzel Mims and who was the other?
Elijah Moore.
And Elijah Moore. If those two become all-star wide receivers, would that not be the most Jet thing ever? Right. And the answer is yes.
To make room for Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard.
And McCole Hardman.
I mean,
I don't mind Hardman.
Denzel Mims, Denzel Mims, he's just one of those guys that was coasting on pre-draft dynasty hype this whole time. Never really did anything, dude. And if they're looking for somebody to replace DJ Chark as the, injury-prone 6'3" speedster paper tiger on the team that doesn't do anything, then they found the guy. Denzel Mims, perfect guy to bring in and say, look at his 40 time, and he's 6'3", and then have him do nothing. So I don't know. Mims has been screaming for a trade for how long, Howard? How long? It feels like 3 years now, right?
I think the day he got drafted, he was like, "You guys trade me, please.
Please trade me." So I don't know. Hey, maybe he just really didn't like both regimes that he dealt with there. But I think the reality is more that he's probably more Martavis Bryant than he is, Chris Carter.
Good pull. Good pull.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Jets, they also placed Breece Hall, among others, on the PUP list to start training camp yesterday. With all the coach speak about him being ready for week 1, does this designation concern you? And I'll go back to Howard as our resident Jets fan here.
No, I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. This is why I was like pounding the drum for Dalvin Cook. Sign Dalvin Cook for the year, and then let him, be the bell cow for the first couple of weeks while you ease Breece Hall back into it. And then in the second half of the season, what do you have? You've got Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook as a 1-2 punch, and then you lean more on Breece Hall in that second half of the season because he's got the fresh legs and he's ready to prove something. You don't have to overwork him because now you've got Dalvin Cook, but that hasn't happened right now, and the Jets are nowhere near the favorites to land Dalvin Cook. And so, I think that no, this doesn't surprise me. It just kind of it saddens me a little bit because what's our running game going to look like to open the season with Michael Carter and Abanikanda, who's I mean, how many fifth round running backs do we really love in fantasy?
Yeah. And I will say this about the pup list at this time of year is the NFL needs more words. They really do. Cause it's like, I'm trying to explain to my wife, I'm like, the tackle tackled that guy. The tackle got past the tackle and tackled that guy, right? Like the pup list the pup list that people think of is the one where you have to miss 4 games, but the offseason pup list, you actually can be activated at any time. It's like if you remain on it past a certain point, then you miss 4 games. It's like, let's change up the terminology so that people can understand what the hell's going on here. In this particular case, if he comes off the pup, like we've seen guys last year, there was a running back. Now it escapes me. He was on the pup list for 1 day. He missed 1 day of training camp, and then he was like, I'm fine. And then they took him off it. So if he comes off it next week, I'm not too worried about it. Otherwise, I'm with Howard, where it's like now we're scrambling to figure out, Michael Carter on pass downs, Bam Knight on rundowns. It just maybe they should just grab Dalvin Cook. But the first thing they should do is change the terminology so people can understand what's going on. Because if it's complicated for me, then it's damn sure complicated for most people.
Well, it's your coach's fault there, Coop. The reason that the terminology sucks for the injury report and everything for the NFL is because Bill Belichick is a scheming, conniving pain in the ass. That's really what it comes down to. Bring me back the probable tag, for crying out loud. Like, this whole thing has just been just a hot mess. Why? Because you had one crotchety old man who was like,
Tom
right?
Brady
he's like Sling Blade and for Billy Bob Thornton in an interview. And it all comes down to the fact that he was trying to play games and screw things up by not declaring players properly on the injury report. That was so
Tom Brady was probable for like 4 straight years. Like every game, 4 straight years. Tom Brady probable with elbow soreness or whatever it was. So
and when they changed the rules there, every player on the page, I remember seeing the injury report. You had like 15 players out of your 52-man roster, 53-man roster that were all questionable.
And then they all played.
It's just shady business. Very shady business. But somebody else got involved in some shady business last night, and that's Vikings rookie wide receiver Jordan Addison. He is reportedly in some legal trouble after being cited with reckless driving. The Minnesota State Police said he was going 140 miles an hour in his Lamborghini. It is only a misdemeanor, but does this have you concerned if he's already making these kinds of decisions before he even hits training camp? And Coop, I'll go with you.
Well, so I will say this. I think in my state, if my state you're going double the speed limit, I think that is actually a felony. So here, if you were driving 140, it would technically be a felony because the max speed limit here is 65, not to split hairs, right? But I mean, 140, that is crazy dangerous, especially after we saw what we saw happen with Henry Ruggs, right? Like ruined his life doing that. And the speed was just as much the alcohol in that case. So I don't know. There have been some reports from people that I know personally that were at the draft, not going to name names, but they may or may not have even been in the chat at some point, that said that during their experience at the draft and combine, they did not love the way Jordan Addison carried himself. Some of the answers to some of the questions, they weren't, there might have been some character issues or even some, potential intelligence questions. So I'm not going to say it because I don't know Jordan Addison personally. I wasn't at those combines and drafts, but I can say this: driving 140 miles an hour in your first ever sports car, when you probably don't have a lot of experience driving vehicles like that, I don't think that's a super smart thing to do, especially because all you have to do right now is hang out and become a millionaire, right? Like play some video games, become a millionaire, and then a couple of years from now, you take the Lamborghini out and do whatever you want. But like if you screw it up now, you end up walking away with whatever your signing bonus was, or worst case scenario, you end up in jail like Henry Ruggs. So that's all I got to say on that.
I think the Ruggs situation is definitely, and I get it, different state laws for certain things. I say Britt made that comment in the chat. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot to unpack with it. It's stupidity. It really is. And and this is like something like this. I mean, behavior like this is tolerated in the NFL. There's not going to be any discipline for Addison on this one here, and fantasy owners are going to still take him the way he was. This isn't like me joking around and saying, well, Rashee Rice was up chucking yesterday at camp, or Jalen Hyde is running with the threes, and those are the guys who I want in fantasy. Like this definitely. Listen, I don't draft. I don't worry about character issues when I draft in fantasy, but I think that it speaks volumes, not just about Addison, but it speaks volumes about the mentorship that's going on in Minnesota. I think that, you've got a phenomenal, life-changing opportunity here. And nobody's like sitting them down and being like, yo, dude, no, this doesn't work like that. Like somebody needs to like, I don't know, take him under his wing. Like that was, where's Chris Carter? Where's Chris Carter?
You need Chris Carter.
And I think that that's something that often goes unaddressed with rookies, especially young rookies who are suddenly millionaires out, coming from nothing in a lot of situations. They have money and suddenly it alters their decision making. And I think that there needs to be some discussion and maybe even a class that rookies take about being responsible with their actions and with their money.
I think every kid needs that. Like that was one of the things I even said that, to my college, like a couple of years after I graduated. What would have been a great course to teach? Handling your finances outside of school, like things like that, like to teach people how to be an adult, especially with these NFL rookies who are making all of this crazy money, that it's just.
Ben Simmons said he learned more at the NBA rookie symposium than he did in all his time at LSU. So, that speaks to the college part, but I don't know what Ben Simmons is up to, but
it does. Ben. So on a more positive note, the Falcons' second-year quarterback, Desmond Ridder, is ready to strengthen the connection with, quote, two monsters in Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Do you think this Atlanta offense will be more balanced this year, or do you expect more of the same run-heavy approach, Howard?
Oh, come on. I wish I loved anything as much as Arthur Smith loves to run the football. It will always be a run-first offense there. It will always Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to the moon. Like Bijan will be the focal point here. But that's not to say that having a ground game of that kind of ferocity isn't going to help boost the passing game. And I think it will. I think if Desmond Ridder has his head on straight and Desmond Ridder can actually be a productive NFL guy, well, then, he needs to, then he's got to have to lean on Kyle Pitts. He's going to have to lean on Drake London, and he's going to have to show everybody that they have to respect the passing game. If that's the case, then you know what? I mean, I don't know what the odds are for the Falcons to win the NFC South, but I might sprinkle a little bit on there.
I think it's
plus
270. Is it?
Ooh, 270 now? 210 is what I was seeing the other day, but could be. You could probably find plus 270 somewhere. I will say this: Howard makes a great point in terms of if the offense is better in general, it just gives you more opportunities. Like you look at the good offenses last year; those teams led the league in total snaps. The Chargers, they threw the most. They threw a ton of passes. The Bucs, the Lions, the Vikings, the Jags, like those teams play the most snaps. So if they're moving the ball with the run, that can set up the pass. Do I think they're going to switch and become a crazy pass happy team all of a sudden? Of course not. But if you're the problem they had last year, same with the Bears, is if you're running it and just going 3 and out, then nothing is happening. So if the run game and Bijan are awesome, that's going to set up more red zone opportunities, more opportunities to run more plays in general. So you can root for both. You can root for the run game to be good to potentially set up the pass. If the team is just flat out bad, though, that's how you get these crazy low offenses that the Falcons and Bears had last year.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. But speaking of the Bears, that's a great transition because Justin Fields has added to his already lofty expectations today, saying that he was going to break the Bears record for most passing yards thrown ever.
Wow.
After his comments yesterday, is it wise to put this much of a magnifying glass on himself before training camp has even started? And Coop, I'll go with you since you broke the story yesterday.
I didn't even know he said this because I was too busy arguing about the last thing he said. So he says well, here's the thing. In his mind, based on his comments, he's already a top 5 greatest all-time running quarterback ever. So since he's already accomplished that and he's already done with that, he might as well move on to passing, right? So I guess that's where he's at. He's already in the top 5 greatest all time. So there's no reason to even worry about that anymore. Let's move on to huck it, chuck it football. And being the Bears' top passer all time, that's probably not even that hard, right? Like even though the team's been around since the 1800s, last time I looked, they only had 12 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and that is not 12 receivers, but 12 total by all the receivers combined. So it's probably not that hard, but I just can't see this team going from throwing the fewest passes in the last 20 years to all of a sudden being some sort of crazy high-end passing attack. If they move up to middle of the pack, that would be a huge accomplishment. So I'm rooting for Justin Fields. He seems like a good dude, but I personally would wait a little bit because Odell Beckham Jr., after his second year, just like Justin Fields' second year, Odell had the most receiving yards of any player through 2 years ever. And he was talking about how he was one of the greatest of all time and he was going to be the greatest of all time. And people were saying it. And then look where we're at now. So I would just play and let other people give you the accolades rather than saying what you already are and what you're going to do after 25 starts.
Right. I don't want to get biblical here, but what is it? Pride before the fall? Is that kind of what we're looking at here? I would love to see Chicago move up to middle of the pack in pass attempts. That's definitely something I would like to do. They don't need to lead anybody, but for the same token, like look at that running back room. Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson's a rookie, and then and Deonta Foreman.
Yeah.
This is not a running back room that gets you excited about it. So, maybe Fields is trying to kind of take that sting off of how crappy his running backs are and, put the focus on him. I do like the fact, though, I got to be honest with you. I do like the fact that he is putting all the attention on himself, which is keeping all the attention off of DJ Moore. It's keeping all the attention off of Roshan Johnson. It's keeping, that was one of the things. That was, again, a page out of Belichick's book. Everybody can hate me all they want because you're not talking about my players. You're just talking about me.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I still have some reservations about the way that Fields is doing this. But our last bit of news today, and this is some real controversy. The NFLPA president covertly suggested in a recent interview that running backs should consider faking injuries in order to gain leverage in contract negotiations. Like, are we in the twilight zone? Is this really a smart thing to be saying? And although he didn't say it directly, he's like, well, they could do this. And I'm not saying that they should, but if they did, it might work. Howard, what do you think about this?
We've got a real problem here. And you know what? And the problem is that the NFLPA, excuse me, president is saying stupid things to deflect away from the fact that it was a stupid CBA agreement. Like, they signed the agreement in 2020 and it's a 10-year CBA. So, he's like, oh, well, here we are, like 3 years into this whole thing. And, we didn't realize that, just what the inflation rate would be, what sliding scale numbers would look like for players over time. And it's like, it's a disaster. So I think the NFLPA is run by a bunch of morons who got used by very savvy ownership representation. And now, they're kind of stuck with it. And so what else is he going to say? Like, what else can they do? I talked about this on Getting Buzzed, actually. And I said, what the running back position needs is solidarity. Like, you need Barkley not to sign. You need Barkley to hold out, Jacobs to hold out. I don't know if Pollard's officially signed his tag yet. Has he?
He has.
He
He
is.
has. Okay, so well, he just screwed it up for everybody.
Just don't show up.
What
Don't show
you
up for
need
work.
is you need Barkley and Jacobs to hold out, and then you need, when those teams start freaking out, then you need Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, and those guys to not sign anywhere and to show this run of support. It's not just tweeting out that I support my fellow running backs ain't going to do it, because that's kind of what needed. If you take the running backs away from the teams, then what are they going to do? Go to the USFL? Are they going to start, how are they going to end up doing that? And it's, but the problem is like, it's never going to happen, because not in this world, not in this economy, not in this selfish me first, I got to get paid kind of a thing. You won't see that. And that means that, for the next 7 years, the NFLPA needs to say stupid things like this, because they got nothing else.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Like, you point out the DeMaurice Smith, who's his signature is on the contract, right? It's like that. I think you should leave meme where he's like, "We're all trying to find the guy who did this," right? Like, it was it was you, dude. Like, this is your fault, Like, and the comment from the running back community that actually kind of got my mind thinking was Josh Jacobs, where he's like, if you're going to treat running backs like this, just get rid of the position. And I'm like, well, how can you do that? Like, the league's not going to do that. I'm wondering, we've actually seen it with linebackers, where linebackers become free agents and their agents say, you can sign my client, but now he's an edge rusher. If you sign him, that's what he is. And if you franchise tag him, now he has to be franchise tagged as an edge rusher. Guys like Austin Eckler, maybe it's time to turn around and say, hey, you know what? I caught 400 balls the last 4 years. I'm the 28th pass catcher in the league over that span. I'm a wide receiver. If you want to sign me, you pay me what you were going to pay me before, but you call me a wide receiver. And then if you want to franchise tag that guy, now you pay him wide receiver money. The tight end, Mike Gesicki, should have done that himself already. But maybe that's the way out of it, is just say, hey, you know what? I don't play that position you're talking about. Saquon says he's more than running back. Say, I don't play that position you're talking about anymore. So There you go.
Yep. I think that the only problem with that is that we've seen it try to happen. And if the teams don't agree with it, then they're like, well, just move on. And that's how
somebody would
that's
sign
how
him,
the
though.
owners.
Well, that's the thing. Like, ownership, the ownership has no incentive whatsoever to change this or to ownership can literally just sit there and say, you guys signed this. It happened. 2030, you can renegotiate it. If you guys don't want to play, we will find somebody who will want to play. And, and then all of a sudden, it's a pass happy NFL anyway. So, you might as well just get all these schlub running backs from the XFL and the USFL and let them play, because those guys will sign for $10 million a year. I'll play running back for $10 million.
Then you got Joe Mixon, who already signed a contract, and then they're like, here, sign this worst contract. And he's like, okay. Right. He's not really helping the cause out, right?
Yeah.
No, he's not, but he's doing it because he just wants to. He knows that he's got the best chance to win a Super Bowl, and and he'll take that pay cut. I mean, he's still making what, $5 million a year?
And if you win that Super Bowl, man, here come the endorsements. It happens every time. So
yep. I'm going to Disneyland.
All right. Well, that is it for all of our news today. I know it feels like there's a ton of it, but yeah, with training camp and with everything coming out, like, I love that there is actual news and it's not all popcorn news. And I've been updating the training camp battles every day in the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide. I've been sitting here, like you said to Coop yesterday, that you were going to chain him to the desk. I have been chained to the desk looking at updates and making sure that training camp injury report is updated. And that is part of the draft guide. You can get that at fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. It is a living draft guide, which, as you might have guessed, means that it's updated all the time throughout the off season. And if you want to get access to all of our sports, go to the All Pro package. Get it 7-day free trial. Use promo code Howard. I have to say Howard today, Coop. He's here.
Oh, well, you didn't use my name the last time.
Yesterday we're using. Yesterday I was like, Howard's not even here. Use promo code Coop. It's shorter. It's easier.
Do we have a promo code Britt?
We don't. I don't have my own. But
I feel like we need one here.
We should. We'll just have a competition, see who gets more. But yeah, use either one of those promo codes for 50% off your first 6 months. That gets you access to every single sport, every single playbook, the lineup generator, the Discord. I mean, you get it all. So go check that out over at fantasyalarm.com.
Indeed. All right, well, let's dive into the draft guide a little bit here, and let's talk about what we got going on. I teased it at the top of the show. Coop finally got off his lazy ass and put an article together here. Right,
Unbelievable, dude. Did you check the timestamp on when that email came in?
What's
up
that?
till midnight.
Yeah.
Slaving over a hot keyboard.
Right. Yeah. No, I saw it. I also saw the spreadsheet that said that it was like 2 days late too. But yeah, I mean, listen, tomato.
Sometimes there's breaking Dalvin Cook news that needs to on article
Britt
too.
Gets her stuff in on time. Just saying.
Yeah, she's an angel.
And
because she did such a good job on her mic. Because she did such a good job on her mid-round wide receiver article, I had to do a just as good, if possible, job on mine. So we basically went in, we talked about the elite wide receivers. Britt did the mid-round, where she covered wide receivers basically from ADP, wide receiver 10 all the way to wide receiver 50 or so. So I took the torch from there, and I covered basically rounds 13. And I was like, you know what? All these crazy leagues, Scott Fishes, all these other stuff, I'm going all the way past round 20. I'm going to give you 2 wide receivers each level, right? 13 to 15, 16 to 20, 18 to 20, and then 20 plus. That way, nobody can sit here and say, oh, he's not a sleeper because my league has 75 bench spots. Well, look at the last name on this article and tell me that that's not deep enough for you. And if it's not, then tag me on Twitter at Coupe Fiasco, and I'll find the deepest wide receiver that'll make your head spin, and I guarantee he'll catch at least 2 passes this year. So that's a challenge there to you guys. But with this article, 8 wide receivers that, are most of them can be picked off of waivers, but a lot of them are cheap. So that's the idea here. Britt set the tone. I took the torch and did this one.
Yeah, so I like it.
I got to ask you guys, this is what we did with Britt's. You basically asked me and Howard, a guy we liked from the article, and then kind of a guy we didn't like, and maybe we talked about some guys we thought should be in here. So let's be nice first, and I'll ask you guys, when you were going through here, which wide receiver were you looking at, and you said, "Yep, no, I agree. I've got a ton of that guy." Howard, any of these guys to you were like, "Yep, that's my guy."
Well, I mean, obviously Rashee Rice is my guy. I love this kid. I've been talking about him, for the entire time. And again, it's about opportunity. That's what it comes down to. This is a kid who is now playing on a team that doesn't have a number 1 wide receiver. They've got a number 1 pass catcher in tight end Travis Kelce. But when you look at Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, this really isn't a great group of wide receivers that you can say that there is a very specific pecking order of targets. So when you're drafting a guy like Rashee Rice, who's got great speed, can stretch the field, maybe he helps Patrick Mahomes increase that ADOT. I know that that's a number that everybody keeps throwing around, is that his ADOT has decreased steadily over the last 3 seasons. Maybe Rashee Rice is the guy that he can bond with, and actually that ends up helping things out. So I like him. I take him late in drafts all over the place. So yeah, I'll say Rashee Rice. How about you, Britt?
Yeah, I think I love the Rashee Rice call. I think that this Kansas City wide receiver room is up for grabs all over the place in another training camp battle article. But I really like Alec Pierce. Shane Steichen has had really high praise for him and loves his speed and his vertical and deep ball ability. And that's exactly what we saw from Steichen as a coach in Philadelphia with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. A lot of Pierce's outcome, though, does depend on how fast Anthony Richardson can develop. But we already know that he's got a cannon for an arm. And it will be very interesting to see how it plays out in training camp. And if it does, I think Pierce has a very high ceiling on this offense.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this. One of the things I love about Alec Pierce, and this goes back to one of my articles from a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's actually a free one. It's the wide receiver pivots article, where when you look at Alec Pierce, if you draft him, which he is being drafted, he's in the top, kind of the top area of this, where he goes around 15 or so. If you take him and week 1, it's Josh Downs or Jelani Woods, those guys are deep enough that you could actually pivot pretty quickly. So I think Pierce is in line to get that full-time role opposite Michael Pittman, but it leaves the door open for you to make other moves, right? So that's why I like Pierce a lot. So now, guys, I got to ask you, and again, you can't really hurt my feelings with this one, because honestly, we're throwing darts. some of these guys are going to be bums, maybe a good chunk of them. If we can pull one or two guys out of this range of these drafts, then we'll feel pretty good. But which guy from the article, and again, we don't want to give it away. There's 8 in there, full write-ups, all these stats. But which guy were you going through and you were just like, I get it, Coop, but nah.
I'll let Britt go first here.
You go first, Britt.
Yeah, so I have very strong feelings on this aspirational model, but Chase Claypool is a bust. Like, he hasn't shown us anything worthy in his 3 years in the NFL, and definitely nothing worth for fantasy. To harken back to your target totem pole, Coop, do we really even expect him to be 4th on this team in targets? And even if he does get those targets, his catch rate is 58%. His yards per route run was only 1.23, which ranked 82nd among all wide receivers. His yards per target was 99th at 5.7. I'm not convinced that the Bears can change their identity overnight into this pass-heavy team to make him relevant. And I don't necessarily believe in Claypool's talent to begin with. So I want nothing to do with him here.
Well, real quick before we go to Howard's. Rookie year, he had 13.43 PPR points per game. That's higher than both Chris Olave and Garrett. It's higher than every rookie last season. I mean, it's not that he hasn't done anything. It's that he hasn't done anything in a little while.
Recency bias. 3 years in a row, not enough for me.
And bounced around from team to team also. And, just.
And then they have motivation issues. Like, the Bears were worried about his offseason motivation. I mean, there's just a ton of red flags with this guy. I want nothing.
That's why he's in the section of the article that's outside the top 20 rounds. But I encourage you listeners out there, we're not going to get into it now, but check out the article. See some of the reasons why I think he's worth keeping an eyeball on. You probably just got to put him on your watch list because, unless your draft is actually 20 rounds, you probably don't need to take him. But check out my argument. It's in there. Howard, what about you?
I'm not a Sterling Shepard guy. I mean, I get it. The dude's had some bad luck with the injuries, and that's a problem. But the injuries have allowed everybody else to sort of pass him by. Last year Darius Slayton did exactly what Darius Slayton needed to do, and that was go to Brian Daboll and say, "I'll take a pay cut to stay with the team. I like what you've got going on here, and I want to make that happen." So he's already endeared himself to the coach. You've got Jalen Hyatt, Isaiah Hodgins. I know you don't like him, Coop, but Isaiah Hodgins is another one who not only endeared himself to Daboll, but also endeared himself to Daniel Jones. And then now you've also brought in Darren Waller. So it's a rough room, and it's definitely a room where that wide receiver 1 job is still up for grabs. I just don't know if Sterling Shepard's the guy to get it.
Yeah, Isaiah Hodgins is on the list of players that I'm not allowed to mention on Twitter anymore, along with Justin Fields. I swear people have like notifications. Ty Montgomery, and now, of course, and Sam Howell. I swear they have notifications on where it's like, oh, Coop said something about this player. Let's murder him. But I guess I bring it on myself. But Sterling Shepard,
I think there's only one person who said, let's murder him. I just don't want you to exaggerate here.
Just the one.
You're not getting death threats. So I mean, not more than
that's
one.
True. Yeah, that's true. No death threats so far. Except one. Sterling Shepard. How dare you talk about Jalen Warren like that? Sterling Shepard. That's one that me and Quick Out co-host John and Pemba, we really should let it go, but we can't. It's like, if this were the Titanic, we would just be holding on to a dead Jack as he's floating in the water. That's like just ice cold, but like he's fine. Like that is kind of where we're at with Sterling Shepard. I actually had a hard time. Finding an ADP for Sterling Shepard because on most sites, like it just says 0. FFPC, shout out to kind of a place for the deeper and sharper formats. They had an ADP for him. It's well over wide receiver 100. I will say this. In his defense, when healthy, which is rare, over the last 3 years, he's played 20 games where he played more than 35% of the snaps. In the other games, he got hurt during those games for the most part. And in those games, he's averaged 8 targets a game. But again, we're talking about a guy that it's got to be a really deep league because even when he does get those targets, he's super low ADOT, right? Low ADOT slot guy. So we're talking about if you're in a really, really deep, scrappy league, like maybe the Scott Fishbowl or something, you might consider this guy. But you're right. Like when you get down to this range of ADP, there's not a whole lot of hope down there. But again, check out the article. There's some stuff in there that may make you say, right? And if it gets you that far, then maybe if something does pop off, you're ready to pull the trigger faster than your league mates. And that's what matters.
I absolutely love there's room on the door for Sterling Shepard, Rose. Let him on.
He's just inside of an entire like block of ice. And we're like, we can fix him.
Wake up,
Sterling. He's just like, let me go. I mean, I don't know. I saw a clip of him on Twitter and he looked pretty good. So that's it.
He always looks good at the beginning of the year, though.
He does,
he
doesn't
always
he?
looks good.
Yeah. How does he recover so fast? He's like Wolverine. Dude, he tore his Achilles in week 15, 2021, and he was playing week 1.
There's a difference between an Achilles tear and an Achilles rupture.
Then when he got back, he tore his ACL and he's back already.
I don't know. I think it's a give and take. You can look good for 2 games out of the season, but then you're going to get hurt and miss the rest of the year.
Right? It's a yin and yang. It's like me freshening up, right? I can look good for one show, but I'll tell you what, come week 8, I'm going to look haggard.
And they ask you to wear another shirt with buttons on it tomorrow, and you're like, this is the one. Like, this is the
yeah, what do you mean?
You're wearing the same shirt, but it's inside out.
It's reversible, I'm telling you. All right, check out this article, late round wide receivers. It's in the draft guide. Again, fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. I mean, it's a great place to find names that if you're making these late picks in your draft, that you get in touch with that. I love the article. I love the way you guys carried it from Britt with the tiers and then kind of coming in here with the late round. Absolutely fantastic. All right, let's continue our run here through the guide. NFL coaching systems. I've got I've got half the teams up on fantasyalarm.com right now. Over the next 3 days, you will get the other half of all those teams. I got to go see the Disco Biscuits tonight at in San Francisco, but so I might not be working.
That's why you're all dressed up.
Right? I got my VIP passes. Yeah.
I'm so jealous of you.
Oh, well, you know what? I'll take a picture of like me and Brownie and we'll send it to you. Oh. In the meantime, I do have stuff that's in the draft guide that you can talk about, and that's the NFL coaching systems. And let's talk about the NFC North right now. We got the Lions, the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings. And, there's been some changes. There have been not so many changes here. So, you know what? I mean, who wants to lead this discussion? I mean, I could sit here and talk about every one of these teams and the things that I wrote, but I don't know. Like, let's start off with the Bears, because obviously Coop is is a troublemaker, and we'll go with that. So, Britt, Matt Eberflus, year 2. Luke Getsy is his offensive coordinator. Talk to me. What do you think about their chances of increasing that passing game and whatnot?
Yeah, I just wonder if we're maybe expecting too dramatic of a change too quickly. So, especially with Justin Fields coming out today and saying that he's going to throw for 4,000 yards, which is something that no Bears quarterback in history has ever done. I think that we're getting a little ahead of ourselves in determining how efficient this passing offense is going to be. We're still going to see a ton of designed quarterback runs and read options, which is something that Getsy likes to do. He likes to play to the strength of his athletes. I don't think that they'll be dead last in pass percentage like they were last year, but it's still going to take a little while to develop a more balanced offense as Getsy kind of figures everything out with DJ Moore and Chase Claypool.
Well, Britt, you can confirm this. On the Lightning Round show last year, you, me, let me set the stage. You, me, Kevin Tompkins, Heath Cummings from CBS. And I said last time Luke Getsy called plays in college football, the quarterback ran the ball over 200 times. And that's in a college season that is like 14 games. I was like, so don't be surprised when Justin Fields runs the ball a million times. And sure enough, they ran some crazy version of the offense where the quarterback ran it a gazillion times. Did that not happen, Britt?
Oh yeah, it
I
did.
want that on my permanent record. I went in. I was looking at like Mississippi State.
Strike a fine.
I was like, well, what this guy's gonna do here? And I was looking at this. I'm like, what the heck is this offense, dude? I'm like, over 200. I was like, what the hell is going on here? So, yeah, I mean, they didn't run it 200 times, but Justin Fields is breaking all sorts of rushing records while they were breaking all sorts of records for not throwing the ball. They can't do that again because they came in dead last. So I do expect them to throw the ball a little more. But it is nice at least to have some continuity here between the coaches because, I mean, sometimes you want uncertainty with, try and find sleepers and stuff. But if you like DJ Moore and you like some of the weapons there, you want them to do what you expect them to do sometimes. So, Howard, are you expecting too much change outside of obviously adding DJ Moore? Are you expecting too much change in what they do?
No, I'm really not expecting too much change. I mean, listen, I think that what we're seeing here, and we talked about this earlier with the running back room in Chicago being what it is. I think we're gonna, I think they stick to what Getsy wants to do. And I think the fact that they got DJ Moore into this team, in order to be that number one wide receiver that this team is so desperately needed, I think it will increase the passing here. I think what we are looking at, I think Impemba said it, right? When Impemba was talking about the parallels between Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, the team gets him their number one wide receiver. He's still going to, work out of a lot of RPO. So I think, I mean, listen, I think that I think that the team is definitely a work in progress. It's all going to hinge on whether or not Justin Fields lives up to all the talking that he's doing.
Yeah. Great point by Scampers in the chat. They can't finish more last than they did last year.
That is true. They cannot.
Oh, man. Bring on all the conversation about the worst team in the NFL playing the best team in college football. Let's just revive this.
Oh, dude, I love that conversation, man. I love that conversation as much as I love talking about who the GOAT is of all through 100 years of sports and all the different eras.
Has anyone ever actually just sat down and went to Nick Saban and said, "Hey, at any given time, could one of your teams beat the worst NFL team?" Just to hear him completely dismiss that question. He wouldn't even say no. He wouldn't
say no.
He'd be like, "Don't you ever ask me a question like that." Do you think he would? Do you think he would?
Yeah, I think he would. I think Saban's that type of guy that he'd be like, he'd be like, I can coach him to it. I can coach him to the win.
Oh, okay. Then somebody should ask him, or they probably have, and he just was like, "Can you ask me a real question?"
Or he can bake a cake to it.
Quit asking.
You'll know what I'm talking about, right?
I do know what you're talking about.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Lions here. Do you guys? We'll start off with what's going on with them. Do you expect the Lions to modify their scheme a little bit in the first 6 weeks, since their personnel isn't exactly suited towards that Erhardt-Perkins system?
Yeah, so I think if you're drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown where you are, you're hoping that this is the year that he kind of flips the Jalen Waddle switch a little bit. Both guys, rookie year, had 7-yard ADOTs. Last year, Waddle moved outside. He went up to 13 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown went down to 6.9. I mean, he's basically just hanging around the same level. If you're drafting him where you are, you want that ceiling to go up, and the easiest way to do it would be a higher ADOT. So I think you are kind of hoping they mix and match what they're doing, move guys around, and then maybe in the slot you have Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. But I honestly think they're kind of leaning into what Jared Goff does best, which is just dink and dump down the ball, right? You want not just Cooper Kupp with the Rams, but Tyler Higbee had that stretch of 100-yard games where that's all Goff did. If that's what Goff does well, and that's what he likes to do, adding a bunch of different versions of Amon-Ra St. Brown, for lack of a better word, is kind of smart. It's like, if that works for Amon-Ra St. Brown, now you have Sam Laporta, who's big Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's small, fast Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's not crazy to try and go death by 1,000 cuts with this offense.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about it, thinking about having Jahmyr Gibbs in the slot and moving St. Brown to the outside, because his 40 time's only like a 4.64. So I was like, I don't think you're exactly suited to be that outside receiver. But I think the addition of Denzel Mims actually really helps them. If Mims can take over that outside role and still leave St. Brown in his home in the slot, I think that spread out offense should work much better. And then they can still rely on the run with Montgomery and Gibbs out of the backfield. So if you would have asked me this question yesterday, I would have said I was worried, but the addition of Mims changes everything. Again, something that I never thought that I would say.
I can't wait to buy you your Detroit Lions Mims jersey.
I'm gonna continue asking this until you have an update. Any update on Frank Ragnow's toe?
Have not heard. I've not heard. No.
Oh, Frank.
You got the Arkansas plug. I will continue to check in on Frank Toe Watch. Frank Ragtoe.
I have not, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Shift over to Green Bay. How about that? Let's because I like touching on each team here just a little bit. And the question that's here in the doc is, since Aaron Rodgers ran the show in Green Bay and just played YOLO ball, which is definitely true, is it possible that this system becomes more of a hybrid than a strict West Coast offense? Who wants to start?
I'm going to start because I think that it absolutely flip-flops, where the run sets up the pass instead of the short passes setting up the run or the long ball, which is why I'm out on Christian Watson. I've been firmly out on Christian Watson since this best ball season even started. And then Jordan Love's unproven. They don't want to put too much pressure on him and destroy his confidence. So I think both running backs get a ton of work. I think that they rotate them both in and out in kind of an even snap share split. And Romeo Doubs and Luke Musgrave are going to see a lot of short dink and dunk passes. But it's not going to be that pass heavy dink and dunk to set up the long ball. I think that run is going to be incorporated in there a lot more than we're used to seeing in the past.
Yeah, or maybe the run will set up the punt. We'll have to see if Matt Well, the thing is, I like
pour one out for your Aaron Jones shares. There,
yes.
I like the idea of giving Jordan Love a fair shot here because we've never seen it, and people didn't want to give Aaron Rodgers a fair shot behind Brett Favre, right? So it's entirely possible, but we have seen this before where there was a question of Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick, and right now, Tom Brady has checked his box, and Bill Belichick is still kind of trying to check his. So with these ego battles, I think I'd rather side with the back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers than Matt LaFleur trying to turn A.J. Dillon into Derrick Henry. It really, like these always do, it's going to boil down to the quarterback, right? Like I was saying the other day, the Falcons had an amazing offseason, and the question is still 100%, is the quarterback any good? So, I mean, that's what it boils down to with this team. Jordan Love, is he any good? I'm excited to see it, and I'm rooting for him, honestly.
I mean, I'm kind of rooting for him also. I think what we're going to see with Green Bay here is this is going to be LaFleur's system in its purest form, because he was calling the plays and he was running the system, for the last couple of years, but Aaron Rodgers was changing the play at the line of scrimmage on the regular. Aaron Rodgers was yelling to get A.J. Dillon out and put Aaron Jones in. I think you're right, Britt. This is definitely a use the run to set up the pass, but the West Coast offense, that it's that style of passing. It is that dink and dunk, and they're going to utilize that. They're going to end up, hitting that with the run, using the dink and dunks to help move the chains, and that's how they're going to methodically get down the field, or at least that's what they want to do. And then establishing that run nice and early is going to help set up play action. It's going to help Jordan Love with the downfield stuff, but. I don't think it's, as far as like the run pass balance, I definitely think that it starts very heavily with the running game. And I do think that both guys are going to be, utilized heavily in this system. Last one here, Minnesota's running game. No Dalvin Cook. Are we expecting too much from their backfield? Madison, Chandler, who do you like?
Yeah, I'll go first on this. It's Madison. And the reason is that money talks and the narrative talks. I think that Alexander Madison knew that Dalvin Cook was out the door a long time ago because he signed that extension to come back as a free agent, could have kind of done whatever. I mean, based on what the market's doing now, he did a great job there. But I think the situation was that they put Dalvin Cook on the trade block. They were trying to move him. And then once that June 1st deadline came by, they said sayonara. So I think Madison was in on those plans. Before we go to Britt, Howard, I had a quick question for you on this one. I love your write-up on this one. the one question I have when I look at this offense is Kevin O'Connell. Like, we know he wants to run that like 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end offense that he did with the Rams. So what's with the CJ Ham extension? I figured I was like, Ham is they're waiting out his contract and they're going to move on. They didn't use a fullback there. Maybe he's growing fond of the fullback after 1 year. What do you make of that?
I think he's gonna bleed him in. I think one of the things that I think Kevin O'Connell saw last year was that, oh geez, maybe Kubiak and Dennison actually do know what they're doing. And I think that's one of the things that we're gonna start to see is that maybe we'll see him, kind of creep in a little bit more. I think the big issue right now, though, is still that O'Connell is like, I want to mix in, zone blocking and power gap blocking. And that's just, that just splits up your offensive line too much to the point where, who moves well laterally, who's a big guy in the middle, that kind of a thing. So I do think that that we'll see. We're not going to see the cuteness with CJ Ham that we've seen, or like we've seen with like Juszczyk or any of those other fullbacks, but I think he'll be utilized here. Britt?
Yeah, I think Ham's going to be utilized. I think everybody in this backfield is going to be utilized. If you read Dan Malin's offensive line rankings in the draft guide, he has the Vikings improved actually from where they were last year. But with as bad as their defense is, I just don't expect them to have the luxury of running the ball even as much as they did last year, where they ran the 5th least running plays in the entire league. I think that it's going to be so pass heavy. And I don't see a lot of consistency or work for any of these 3 guys, to be honest.
All right. Well, listen, folks, go over and get the draft guide. FantasyAlarm.com/draft guide. Check out the coaching systems articles, everything that we've got in there. It's going to help you dominate not just your drafts, but everything in season as well. It's a living draft guide, so it's continuously updated, and you don't want to miss out, because not only is it updated straight through week 1, but then you're going to be able to take pieces of that draft guide. You're going to be able to utilize that for better waiver claims, better understanding of what's going on when teams actually switch schemes mid-season. We've seen that happen a couple of times. So there's plenty of stuff that you want to get in on there. That's going to do it for us, though, here on the show. As always, Britt and Coop, it's always great to get to hang out with you guys. I always have a good time here.
Especially when the chat comes in to hang out with us too, man. You guys crack me up over there. So.
I do love this chat, right? Yeah. Scampers, Dustin, Sellers, Fatty McFats. It's a great bunch of people here.
Yeah. So thank you guys. And hey, I updated my rankings today. Those are fresh. If you get the draft guide today, you are getting rankings stamped 720. Baby, let's go.
There you go. Fantasy football game show with Front Yard Fantasy. That's what's next. That's what's next. For Britt, for Coop, I'm Howard. We'll catch you next time.